There are moments in life we never see coming. A misplaced letter, a delayed train, or a door that closes just when we need it open. But sometimes, those very moments become the start of everything. And this story begins on a windy afternoon, as she stepped off the train with eyes full of hope, unaware that destiny was waiting just around the bend.
A humble mail-order bride named Sarah Collins arrived in the wealthy frontier town of Silver Creek with nothing but a worn suitcase and dreams of a better life. The town's elite took one look at her threadbare dress and turned their backs, leaving her alone and heartbroken. Whispers and judgment followed her everywhere. She was too poor, too common, not worthy of their society. But everything changed when Jackson Cooper, the richest rancher in the territory, saw something in Sarah that others had missed. He didn't just offer her marriage, he gave her his entire world, his sprawling ranch and his fortune. What made this wealthy cowboy choose a penniless bride over all the society ladies who sought his hand? The stagecoach rattled to a stop, kicking up clouds of dust that settled on Sarah Collins's already travel-worn dress. She clutched the creased letter in her pocket, the marriage agreement that had brought her all the way from Boston to Silver Creek, Wyoming territory. The carefully penned words had promised so much: a respectable marriage, a comfortable home, a fresh start. Last stop, Silver Creek. The driver's gruff voice jolted her from her thoughts. Sarah gathered her single leather suitcase, its handle worn smooth from nervous gripping during the long journey. As she stepped down onto the wooden platform, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the bustling frontier town. Silver Creek was grander than she'd imagined. The main street boasted proper brick buildings with gleaming glass windows, ladies in fine silk dresses and gentlemen in tailored suits. Her heart sank as she caught her reflection in a shop window. Her plain cotton dress and scuffed boots marked her as an outsider. "Miss Collins!" A sharp voice cut through the station's bustle. "Sarah Collins!" A woman approached, her expensive purple dress rustling with each step. Mrs. Eleanor Havisham. Sarah recognized the name from her correspondence with her intended groom. "Yes, ma'am." Sarah straightened her spine, trying to project dignity despite her dusty appearance. Mrs. Havisham's eyes swept over Sarah's simple attire, her lips pursing. "I'm afraid there's been a situation." She extracted an envelope from her beaded reticule. "Mr. Richardson received your daguerreotype last week. He's decided," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "to pursue other arrangements." The world tilted beneath Sarah's feet. "But the agreement?" Her fingers found the letter in her pocket, now feeling as insubstantial as the hopes it had carried. "Mr. Richardson was expecting someone more." Mrs. Havisham gestured vaguely at Sarah's appearance. "Suitable for his position in society. He's willing to cover your return fare to Boston." Sarah's cheeks burned with humiliation, but she forced her voice to remain steady. "I spent everything. I had to come west. I can't—" She swallowed hard. "I won't go back." "As you wish." Mrs. Havisham's tone suggested this was precisely the poor judgment she expected. "The Pioneer Inn might suit your means, though I wouldn't delay seeking employment." She turned to leave, then paused. "Word of advice, Miss Collins. Silver Creek has standards. You might find yourself happier in one of the mining towns." Sarah watched Mrs. Havisham's purple silk disappear into the crowd, her fingers still wrapped around the worthless marriage agreement. Through the station window, she caught a glimpse of rolling ranch land stretching toward distant mountains. On the horizon, a sprawling house stood proud against the darkening sky, the Cooper Ranch, she would later learn. She squared her shoulders and picked up her suitcase. She'd sold every possession except what fit in this case, spent every penny to reach Silver Creek. The letter had promised her a future, and though that promise lay in ashes, she refused to let it be the end of her story. She'd find a way to make her own place in this town, no matter what they thought of her threadbare dreams. Across the street, two elegantly dressed women whispered behind their fans, their eyes fixed on Sarah's patched sleeve. She lifted her chin and started walking. She was poor, not broken, and Sarah Collins had never needed anyone's permission to survive. The sun dipped lower, painting the grand brick buildings in gold. Somewhere in this town, there would be a place for her. She just had to be strong enough to find it. The Pioneer Inn lived up to Mrs. Havisham's implications. Paint peeled from its weathered clapboards, and the steps creaked ominously under Sarah's feet. Still, it was shelter, and the innkeeper, a gruff widow named Mrs. Potts, had at least looked her in the eye while naming her price. $3 a week, not a penny less, Mrs. Potts had declared, and you'll need to share the washroom with the other girls. Now, in her narrow third-floor room, Sarah opened her suitcase and reached for the hidden pocket she'd sewn herself. Her fingers found the cool silver of her mother's locket. She'd promised herself she wouldn't sell it. It was her last connection to home, to the woman who taught her to hold her head high, no matter what life threw at her. But $3 a week. A knock at her door startled her. A young maid stood in the hallway, arms full of rough linens. "I'm Jenny," she said, offering a sympathetic smile. "Thought you might need these." "Thank you." Sarah helped her spread the sheets on the thin mattress. "I'm Sarah Collins." "I know," Jenny's cheeks coloured. "News travels fast here, especially when Mrs. Havisham's doing the telling." Sarah's hands stilled on the bedding. "I suppose everyone knows then." "Don't let them get to you." Jenny straightened the pillowcase with more force than necessary. "This town, they think money's the same as worth, but some of the poorest people I know have the richest hearts." Sarah touched the locket through her dress. "My mother used to say something similar." "Smart woman." Jenny glanced at the door, then lowered her voice. "Listen, if you need work, the general store's looking for help. Mr. Peterson's wife is having a baby, and they need someone to mind the shop mornings. It won't be much, but thank you, Jenny." Sarah felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "I'll go first thing tomorrow." But tomorrow brought its own humiliations. Mr. Peterson took one look at her worn dress and shook his head. "We have a certain clientele," he explained, not unkindly. "Perhaps try the laundry." The laundry didn't want her either, nor did the dressmaker, the milliner, or the cafe. By midday, Sarah's feet ached from walking, and her throat was tight from swallowing pride. She paused outside the bank, watching wealthy ladies sweep in and out. Their silk dresses rustled like autumn leaves, their jewels catching the sunlight. One woman's necklace probably cost more than everything Sarah owned. Her mother's locket seemed to grow heavier against her chest. "Not yet," she whispered to herself. "Not while there's still hope." She was so lost in thought that she almost collided with a man exiting the bank. "Pardon me, miss," a deep voice said, steadying her with a gentle hand. Sarah looked up into eyes the colour of summer sky. The man was tall, well-dressed, but without the studied elegance of town dandies. His hands were strong, tanned, working hands despite his fine clothes. "My fault entirely," Sarah managed, stepping back. She caught whispers from nearby ladies. "Jackson Cooper, and richest rancher in the territory." He touched his hat and moved past her, but Sarah felt his gaze follow her down the street. She straightened her spine, refusing to hurry despite the whispers that trailed in her wake. Back in her room that evening, Jenny brought her a bowl of soup and more kindness than Sarah had encountered all day. "Give it time," the maid advised. "This town's like a wild horse. It fights anything new at first, but it can be gentled." Sarah fingered her mother's locket, remembering the way Jackson Cooper's eyes had held no judgment, only interest. Perhaps Jenny was right. Perhaps time would soften Silver Creek's sharp edges. Or perhaps, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, she would have to find the strength to reshape those edges herself. The Silver Creek Gazette Society page lay open on Sarah's small dresser, its neat columns announcing the upcoming Harvest Festival. She'd found the paper discarded in the inn's parlour, Mrs. Havisham's scripted column taking pride of place. "Only the finest of Silver Creek society will attend this year's grand celebration." The words might as well have been barbed wire, designed to keep people like her firmly outside. They put it in writing to make sure everyone knows their place, Jenny said, sliding a cup of tea across Sarah's worn table. Miss Victoria Blackwood writes half of it, even if Mrs. Havisham gets the credit. Victoria Blackwood, the Queen Bee herself. Jenny settled onto Sarah's bed, lowering her voice. Richest family in town, except for the Coopers. And she's had her sights set on Jackson. Cooper since they were children. Sarah's mind flashed to the man outside the bank. His kind eyes, the way he'd steadied her with those strong hands. They're courting, Jenny snorted. She wishes. Mr. Cooper's too busy running his ranch to play society games. But that doesn't stop her from acting like she's already Mrs. Cooper. A commotion from the street drew them to the window. A gleaming carriage had stopped outside, and a woman in an emerald green dress descended, her blonde hair arranged in perfect curls. Speaking of the devil, Jenny murmured, that's her now. Victoria Blackwood moved like she owned the street itself, parasol tilted just so. Two other ladies flanked her, their dresses equally fine, but somehow less commanding. They paused beneath Sarah's window, voices carrying clearly in the morning air. Did you hear about the mail-order bride? Victoria's voice dripped honey-coated poison. Apparently she's refusing to leave town, living right here, in this establishment. How dreadfully common, one of her companions tittered. Indeed, though I hear Mr. Cooper actually spoke to her yesterday, outside the bank of all places. Sarah's cheeks burned. She stepped back from the window, but Jenny grabbed her arm. Watch, she whispered. As if on cue, a rider appeared at the end of the street. Jackson Cooper sat tall in the saddle, his horse's coat gleaming in the sunlight. He slowed as he passed Victoria's group, tipping his hat politely, but not stopping despite Victoria's obvious attempt to catch his eye. Instead, his gaze lifted to Sarah's window. Their eyes met for a brief moment before he rode on. Victoria's face darkened like a thundercloud. She snapped her parasol shut and herded her companions toward the millinery shop, her sharp voice carrying complaints about dusty streets and inconsiderate riders. Well, Jenny said, fighting a grin. That was interesting. It was nothing. Sarah turned from the window, but her heart was racing. He was probably just curious about the town scandal. Mr. Cooper doesn't care for scandal, or for Victoria's games. Jenny gathered her cleaning supplies. You know what I think? I think he sees something in you that reminds him of himself. What do you mean? He wasn't born rich, built everything from nothing just 10 years ago. The society folks had to accept him once he got wealthy, but they've never forgiven him for proving that fine breeding isn't everything. Sarah picked up the newspaper again, studying the society column with new eyes. Every line about proper behavior and acceptable connections felt like a wall built to protect privilege. But walls, she reminded herself, could be climbed. The Harvest Festival, she said slowly. It's open to the public, isn't it? Jenny's eyes widened. Sarah, no, they'll eat you alive. They already think the worst of me. Sarah traced the announcement's elegant script. What more can they do? Don't underestimate Victoria Blackwood. She's ruined people for less. But Sarah was thinking of Jackson Cooper's quiet defiance, the way he'd refused to play Victoria's game. Perhaps it was time to stop trying to prove herself worthy of Silver Creek's society. Perhaps it was time to show them that their approval had never been the prize she was seeking. The Harvest Festival transformed the town square into a dream of autumn splendor. Lanterns strung between maple trees cast golden light over hay bales and harvest displays. Ladies in jewel-toned silks twirled with gentlemen in dark suits while a string quartet played from the bandstand. Sarah pressed her mother's locket for courage before stepping into the light. She'd spent 3 days reworking her best dress, using every skill her mother had taught her. The deep blue cotton was simple but elegantly cut, with clever tucking that disguised its worn spots. Still, her empty dance card felt like a brand as she made her way through the crowd. Well, if it isn't the mail-order reject. Victoria Blackwood's voice cut through the music. She stood with her usual coterie, resplendent in burgundy silk. I'm surprised you had the nerve to show your face. Sarah lifted her chin. It's a public event, Miss Blackwood. Public, yes. Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. But there are standards. For instance, she plucked Sarah's dance card from her wrist, holding it up for her friends to see. Empty. How embarrassing. Though what else could one expect? The surrounding conversation died away as people turned to watch. Sarah felt her cheeks burn, but kept her spine straight. I wasn't aware that worth was measured by dance cards. No? Victoria's eyes glittered. Then perhaps we should measure it by rejected marriage proposals or the quality of one's. She looked pointedly at Sarah's dress. Attire. I've always found character to be a better measure. The deep voice sent a ripple through the crowd. Jackson Cooper stood behind Victoria, his expression neutral, but his eyes hard as steel. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, but his tan marked him as a man who worked his own land. Victoria's face underwent a remarkable transformation, spite melting into sweet welcome. Jackson, we were just discussing the importance of maintaining proper social. I heard what you were discussing. He moved past her, as if she were invisible, stopping before Sarah. Miss Collins, I believe this dance is mine. Sarah's heart thundered as he took her dance card, inscribing his name in bold strokes. She caught a glimpse of Victoria's face, pale with fury, before Jackson led her onto the dance floor. His hand was warm at her waist, calloused fingers gentle against her own. I apologize for being presumptuous, he said softly as they began to move. But I've been hoping for a chance to speak with you properly. Have you? Sarah matched his steps, grateful for her mother's insistence on dancing lessons. Or were you just being kind? I'm rarely kind for kindness' sake, Miss Collins. His eyes crinkled at the corners. I find it wastes everyone's time. The music swept them past Victoria's group. Sarah could feel their stares like needles. Then why? Because I recognized something in you. He guided her through a turn, his movements sure and steady. The same thing I saw in myself 10 years ago when I first came to Silver Creek with nothing but determination and dreams. And now you own half the valley. I own what I earned. His voice hardened slightly. Every acre, every head of cattle. I built it all myself. The society folks had to accept me once I succeeded, but they've never forgiven me for proving that their rules don't matter. Sarah thought of her empty suitcase, her worn shoes, her refusal to retreat. Rules only matter if you accept them. Exactly. He smiled, and something warm unfurled in Sarah's chest. Which is why I'd like to offer you a job. The music was ending. Around them, other couples prepared to separate, but Jackson kept hold of her hand. My housekeeper left last month. The position comes with room and board at the ranch and a fair wage. The rich rancher offers the poor mail-order bride a position as his servant. Sarah raised an eyebrow. That will set tongues wagging. Let them wag. His eyes held hers steadily. I'm offering you a chance, Miss Collins. What you make of it is entirely up to you. The music stopped. Across the square, Victoria watched them with naked hatred. But for the first time since arriving in Silver Creek, Sarah felt the ground steady beneath her feet. When do I start? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Morning light slanted through the study windows of Cooper Ranch as Sarah dusted the heavy oak desk. A leather-bound ledger lay open, its pages filled with neat columns of numbers and careful notes in Jackson's steady hand. She couldn't help noticing the entries. Advanced Thomas Miller seed money for spring planting. Extended Crawford widow's loan payment. Poor harvest. Hired Jim's boy Pete needs work for school fees. Snooping through my books, Miss Collins? Sarah started at Jackson's voice, but his expression held amusement rather than accusation. He stood in the doorway, his coat off, sleeves rolled to reveal sun-bronzed forearms. I apologize, Mr. Cooper, I was just learning my secrets. He crossed to the desk, running a finger along one column of figures. What do you make of them? Sarah hesitated, then decided on honesty. They tell a different story than the Silver Creek believes about you. Oh? He leaned against the desk, studying her. And what story is that? The ruthless businessman who built an empire through cunning and luck. She gestured to the ledger. But these entries show something else. You help people, not with charity, but with opportunity. The same way someone once helped me. His eyes grew distant. I came here with nothing, you know. But old man Harrison saw something in me, gave me work, taught me ranching. When he died, he left me enough to buy my first piece of land. He smiled slightly. Victoria's father was furious, said Harrison had lost his mind, leaving property to a saddle tramp. Is that why she dislikes you so much? Part of it. He straightened, closing the ledger. Mostly she can't forgive me for refusing to court her. A marriage would have legitimized my position in society. But you didn't want legitimacy on their terms. No more than you do. His gaze held hers. I've watched you this past week, Miss Collins. You work hard, but more than that, you notice things. See people for who they are, not what they own. Sarah thought of Jenny's kindness, Mrs. Potts's gruff fairness, the way Jackson's ranch hands tipped their hats to her with genuine respect. Money's a poor measure of character, yet it's the only measure this town understands. He moved to the window, looking out over the corrals where horses kicked up dust in the morning sun. Do you know why I really offered you this position? I assumed it was pity. He turned sharply. Is that what you think of me? No, she said softly. No, I don't think you've ever pitied anyone in your life. You respect people too much for that. Something changed in his expression, a softening around the eyes, a quirk of his lips. You see? You understand. That's why I wanted you here, not for dusting ledgers or managing the household, though you do both admirably. I wanted someone who sees the world the way I do. Heat crept up Sarah's neck. Mr. Cooper, Jackson, he said. Please, at least when we're alone. The intimacy of it made her heart flutter. Jackson, what exactly are you suggesting? For now? Dinner, tonight. Not as employer and housekeeper, but as two people who understand what it means to build something from nothing. Through the window, Sarah could see Silver Creek in the distance, its church spire gleaming. Somewhere down there, Victoria Blackwood was probably already planning her next attack. But up here, in this sun-filled study with its telling ledger and its remarkable owner, none of that seemed to matter. Yes, she said, I'd like that. His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Good. Because I have a feeling, Miss Collins, that you and I could build something remarkable together. As she left the study, Sarah's fingers brushed the locket at her throat. For the first time since arriving in Silver Creek, she felt her mother would truly be proud. Not because she'd found security or position, but because she'd remained true to herself, and in doing so had found someone who valued that truth above all else. Sarah found the note slipped beneath her door the morning after her dinner with Jackson. The paper was expensive, the handwriting elegant but unsigned. Ask him about Elizabeth Harrison. Ask why old man Harrison's daughter left town the same night Cooper got his inheritance. Some fortunes are built on more than hard work. Her hands trembled as she read it again. The dinner had been perfect, simple food served in the ranch house's cozy dining room, hours of conversation that flowed like water. Jackson had told her more about his past, his dreams for the ranch, the improvements he planned. Not once had he mentioned anyone named Elizabeth. A knock at her door made her jump. Jenny stood there, her face worried. Sarah, you need to hear. This. I was just at the general store. Come in. Sarah pulled her inside, showing her the note. Did you know about this? About Elizabeth Harrison? Jenny's face paled. That's what I came to tell you. Victoria's in town, spreading stories. She says, Jenny twisted her apron. She says Mr. Cooper seduced Elizabeth Harrison to get her father's land, that when the old man died, Elizabeth fled in shame. Sarah sank onto her bed. It's not true. It can't be. Of course it's not. The new voice made both women turn. Mrs. Potts stood in the doorway, her usually stern face softened with concern. I was here when it all happened. Elizabeth Harrison ran off with a traveling salesman 2 months before her father died. Broke the old man's heart. That's why he left the land to Jackson. Said he was more a son to him than his own blood ever was. Then why? Because Victoria. Blackwood sees you as a threat. Mrs. Potts entered the room, closing the door. Jackson Cooper's shown more interest in you in 1 week than he has in her in 10 years. She'll use any weapon she can find. Sarah looked down at the note. She wants me to doubt him. More than that, Jenny said. She wants everyone in town to doubt both of you. She's saying you're repeating history, that you're using your position here to trap him, just like she claims Elizabeth did. Anger flared in Sarah's chest. Hot and bright. I'm nothing like... She stopped, realizing this was exactly the reaction Victoria wanted. Mrs. Potts nodded approvingly. Good girl. Keep your head. Victoria's playing a dangerous game, spreading lies about Jackson Cooper. He might be patient with gossip about himself, but if she hurts someone he cares for, the implications hung in the air. Sarah smoothed the note with trembling fingers. What should I do? Ask him, Mrs. Potts said simply. Not because you doubt him, but because he deserves to know what's being said, and because... She gave Sarah a knowing look. If there's to be anything real between you, it needs to be built on truth. After they left, Sarah stood at her window, watching the sun climb over the mountains. The note felt heavy in her hand, weighted with choices. She could ignore it, pretend she'd never seen it. She could pack her bags and leave, avoid becoming entangled in Silver Creek's web of rumors and revenge. Or she could do what she'd promised herself when she first arrived, face whatever came with courage and dignity. The decision, when it came, felt like stepping into clear air. She changed into her work dress, pinned her hair neatly, and touched her mother's locket for strength. Then she headed to the study where she knew Jackson would be reviewing contracts. He looked up when she entered, his smile fading as he saw her expression. Sarah, what's wrong? She held out the note. We need to talk about Elizabeth Harrison. His face went still, but his eyes held something like approval. Yes, he said, quietly. I believe we do. Jackson didn't speak immediately after reading the note. Instead, he walked to a cabinet in the corner of his study, unlocked it, and withdrew a yellowed newspaper. The Silver Creek Gazette's masthead was faded, but legible. Harrison Ranch, heir disappears. Property left to former ranch hand. I keep this, he said quietly, to remind myself that truth outlasts gossip. He handed Sarah the paper. Read it, all of it. Sarah smoothed the brittle page carefully. The article painted a different picture than Victoria's whispers. Elizabeth Harrison, described as willful and impetuous, had left with a traveling salesman named James Morton after her father refused to sell part of the ranch to fund Morton's business ventures. The article went on to detail how Jackson Cooper had discovered Morton's outstanding debts in 3 territories and warned old man Harrison, only to be too late. She'd already gone, Jackson said, his voice heavy with old regret. Took her father's cash box with her. Morton had convinced her they'd make a fortune in railroad speculation. What happened to her? She wrote once, 6 months later, penniless in Denver, Morton long gone. He ran a hand through his hair. I offered to bring her home, but she refused. Pride, shame, stubbornness, maybe all 3. Her father died a week after receiving her letter. Sarah set the paper down gently. And he left you the ranch. Said I was the son he'd wished he'd had. Jackson's laugh held no humor. Victoria's father contested the will, of course. Said I'd manipulated a grieving man. But Harrison had been teaching me ranching for years, grooming me to take over. He knew Elizabeth would never come back to run it. Why didn't you ever tell this story? Clear your name? And drag Elizabeth's name through the mud? He shook his head. She made foolish choices, but she didn't deserve that. Besides, I figured actions would speak louder than words. 10 years of running this ranch honestly, helping where I can, that should count for something. Sarah thought of the ledger with its careful notes of help given and faith extended. It counts for everything. He turned to her then, his eyes intense. Now you know the worst they can say about me. If you want to leave, I'll understand. Victoria won't stop her attacks and being associated with me. I'm not Elizabeth, Sarah said firmly. I won't run from gossip, and I don't need to be rescued by traveling salesmen or wealthy ranchers. I came west to build a life of my own. Something shifted in Jackson's expression. Respect, admiration, and perhaps something warmer. No, he said softly. You're nothing like Elizabeth. You're far stronger. He stepped closer, and Sarah's heart began to race. His hand rose to touch her cheek, calloused fingers gentle against her skin. Sarah, The study door burst open. Jenny stood there, breathless. Mr. Cooper, in town, it's Miss Victoria. She's called a meeting of the town council. She's demanding they investigate impropriety at the ranch. Sarah felt Jackson go rigid beside her. His hand dropped, but he didn't step away from her. On what grounds? She says she has proof, letters. She claims, showing that you and Miss Sarah. Jenny's face flamed red. I see. Jackson's voice was deadly quiet. Sarah, I need to go into town. This has gone far enough. I'm coming with you. He started to protest, but she held up a hand. Elizabeth ran. I won't. Whatever lies Victoria's telling, we'll face them together. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something solidified between them. A partnership forged in adversity, a shared understanding that some things were worth fighting for. Together then, he said, offering his arm. Let's go show Silver Creek what real character looks like. The town council meeting had been fierce but fruitless. Victoria's evidence proved to be nothing more than carefully crafted insinuations. When Jackson produced the newspaper article about Elizabeth, along with witness statements from long-time ranch hands, even Victoria's most ardent supporters fell silent. Now, a week later, Sarah stood in Jackson's study again, but this time she wasn't dusting. The deed to Cooper Ranch lay on the desk between them, its official seal gleaming in the lamplight. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold. You understand what I'm offering? Jackson's voice was soft, but serious. This isn't just about marriage. I'm asking you to be a true partner in everything. The ranch, the business, the future we could build. Sarah traced the deed's elaborate border with a fingertip. Why me? You could have any woman in Silver Creek. Victoria? Victoria wants to own me. He moved around the desk, taking Sarah's hands in his. You want to build something with me. There's a world of difference in that. The town will talk. The town always talks, but look at this. He released her hands to open his ledger. Since you've been here, we've increased efficiency by 15%. Your ideas about rotating, the cattle pastures, modernizing the account books, you've already proven yourself a better partner than I could have hoped for. Sarah thought of her first days in Silver Creek, the humiliation and rejection. When I came west, I thought I was looking for security, a safe harbor in a strange land. And now I realize I was looking for something else, a place where I could be myself, where I could grow into the person I was meant to be. She met his eyes. You gave me that chance. You gave it to yourself. His smile was tender. I just had the good sense to recognize what was right in front of me. He took a small box from his desk drawer. I had this made in Denver. Inside was a ring, elegant but sturdy, set with a small but perfect diamond. Like you, beautiful, but practical enough for ranch life. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest. Jackson, let me finish. He took her hand again. I'm not offering charity or rescue. I'm offering partnership in every sense of the word. Equal shares in the ranch, equal say in decisions. I want to build a legacy with you, Sarah Collins. One that will make Silver Creek remember that true worth isn't about where you come from, but who you choose to become. Tears blurred Sarah's vision. She thought of her mother's locket, of the courage it had taken to come west, of all the moments that had led to this one. Yes, yes to all of it. The partnership, the ranch, the legacy. She squeezed his hands. Most of all, yes to you. His kiss was gentle at first, then deeper, full of promise and passion and shared dreams. When they finally parted, his eyes were bright with joy and mischief. "Shall we go tell Victoria?" Sarah laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Let's make an announcement in the society pages. Local rancher eschews proper society match for mail-order bride of dubious background. Wealthy cattleman discovers true love comes without pedigree," Jackson countered, pulling her close again. "Town shocked as Cooper Ranch gains competent management at last." Their laughter mingled in the warm evening air. Through the window, Sarah could see ranch hands heading to the bunkhouse, horses in the corrals, the endless sweep of land that would now be partly hers. Not just a safe harbor after all, but a kingdom built on hard work and honest values, one that she would help expand and nurture. "What are you thinking?" Jackson asked softly. "That some dreams are too small." She touched her mother's locket, then reached for the deed. "And that the best ones come true in ways we never expect." "Speaking of dreams," he grinned, "wait until you see what I have planned for the south pasture." Sarah picked up his ledger, already making mental calculations. "Tell me everything." The wedding invitations were simple but elegant, engraved on cream-colored paper. "Mr. Jackson Cooper and Miss Sarah Collins request the honor of your presence." Sarah watched Mrs. Potts's face as she read the invitation, noting how the older woman's stern expression softened. "Well," Mrs. Potts said, smoothing the paper with careful fingers, "Victoria Blackwood will have something to say about this." "Victoria Blackwood has already said plenty." Jenny burst into the room, her face flushed with anger. "She's at the town council right now, trying to convince them that the marriage would be detrimental to Silver Creek's reputation." Sarah's hands clenched in her skirts. "On what grounds?" "She's claiming that since you came here as a mail order, right, you're technically still bound by contract to Mr. Richardson. Says the marriage wouldn't be legal." "That's ridiculous," Mrs. Potts snapped. "Mr. Richardson rejected the contract himself. Everyone knows that." "Everyone knows a lot of things," came a new voice. Jackson stood in the doorway, his expression grim. "But Victoria's father has just filed an injunction against the marriage." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "Can they do that?" "They can try." Jackson crossed the room to take her hands. "They're claiming that as founding members of Silver Creek, they have the right to protect the town's moral character. They've convinced Judge Morton to at least hear their case." "Judge Morton?" Jenny's eyes widened. "But he's Victoria's uncle." "Exactly." Jackson's jaw tightened. "They're trying to force a delay, hoping to either break us apart or drive us to marry elsewhere. Either way, Victoria wins. She'll claim we were forced to flee in shame." Sarah lifted her chin. "Then we don't flee. We fight." "Sarah?" "No." She pulled away, pacing to the window. "I've run before. Left Boston because I thought I needed someone else to give me a future. But that's not who I am anymore." She turned back to face them. "This is our home, our life. I won't let them take that from us." Mrs. Potts cleared her throat. "I may be able to help with that." She reached into her pocket and withdrew a folded letter. "Been saving this, hoping it wouldn't be needed. It's from Elizabeth Harrison." The room went still. Jackson's voice was hoarse when he spoke. "When?" "Came last month. She's in San Francisco. Now married to a merchant, doing well." Mrs. Potts handed him the letter. "She heard about you and Sarah, offers her congratulations, and something more. A sworn statement about what really happened 10 years ago, notarized and everything." Sarah watched emotions play across Jackson's face as he read. "This clears everything up. About her father's will, about the inheritance." "More than that," Mrs. Potts said. "It shows how the Blackwoods tried to manipulate the situation back then, how they offered to help Elizabeth contest the will if she'd say certain things about you, which she refused to do," Jackson murmured. "And now here they are trying the same tricks again." Mrs. Potts's smile was fierce. "Only this time we have proof of their methods." Sarah looked at their wedding invitation still lying on the table. Such a simple thing, really, just paper and ink and hope. but it represented everything they were fighting for, the right to build a life on their own terms, to be judged by their actions rather than their origins. "When is the hearing?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning." Jackson reached for her hand again. "Sarah, if you want to wait, find another way." She silenced him with a kiss, brief but fierce. "Tomorrow morning it is. Let's show Silver Creek what real character looks like again." From somewhere in town, church bells began to ring the hour. Sarah thought about all the moments that had led to this one, stepping off that stagecoach, fighting for respect, finding love in the most unexpected place. Whatever happened tomorrow, she knew one thing for certain. She'd finally found something worth fighting for. By lamplight, Sarah wrote in the leather-bound journal Jackson had given her, her pen scratching softly against the cream-colored pages. "Tomorrow we face Judge Morton and the town council. Jackson says I shouldn't worry, that truth will prevail. But I've learned that truth, like everything else in Silver Creek, depends on who's telling it. Still, for the first time in my life, I'm not fighting alone." A knock interrupted her. Writing. Jenny slipped in, carrying a bundle wrapped in brown paper. "It's done," she whispered, laying the package on Sarah's bed. "Mrs. Potts and I worked all night." Sarah unwrapped the paper to reveal a dress of deep blue silk, not new, but masterfully altered. Mrs. Potts had somehow transformed her best gown into something that could rival any of Victoria's fashions. "We used the silk from Mrs. Potts's own wedding dress for the trim," Jenny said proudly. She said something about armor for battle. Sarah touched the fabric reverently before returning to her journal. "The kindness of true friends still takes my breath away. They understand this isn't just about a wedding. It's about the right to build a life on our own terms." From downtown came the sound of horses, late-night riders heading to the Blackwood estate. Victoria was gathering her allies. Sarah's pen moved faster. "Jackson thinks Victoria's desperate attack is about him, about her wounded pride. But I've seen the way she looks at the ranch, at the empire he's built. This isn't about love. It's about power. The Blackwoods have always controlled Silver Creek's narrative. A mail-order bride rising to become mistress of the territory's largest ranch. It destroys everything they believe about birthright and social order." She paused, remembering the ledger in Jackson's study, the careful notes of lives touched and improved. More than just a business record, it was proof that true worth came from actions, not ancestry. Another knock, stronger this time. Jackson entered carrying a stack of papers. "Elizabeth's letter has been officially entered into evidence," he said, sitting beside Sarah on the bed. "And 3 more ranch hands have agreed to testify about the Blackwoods' attempts to buy them off 10 years ago." Sarah closed her journal, turning to face him. "Will it be enough? Judge Morton may be Victoria's uncle, but he's also a man who prides himself on his reputation for fairness." Jackson's smile was grim, making him choose between family loyalty and public scandal. "That's a special kind of pressure." "I've been thinking," Sarah said slowly, "about what you said when you proposed, about building a legacy." And she opened her journal again, showing him what she'd written. "It's not just about us anymore. Every time someone like Victoria wins, it reinforces the idea that birth and wealth are all that matter. But if we win, we show that character and hard work count for more." He read a few lines from her journal, his expression softening. "You're quite the philosopher, Miss Collins." "Soon to be Mrs. Cooper," she corrected, then hesitated. "If tomorrow goes well," he caught her chin gently, turning her face to his. "Listen to me, Sarah. Whatever happens in that courtroom, we'll face it together. If they rule against us, we'll find another way. I didn't build this ranch by giving up at the first obstacle, or the 50th. She teased, trying to lighten the moment. "You should have seen attempt 23, nearly got trampled by my own cattle." Sarah laughed, then grew serious again. She picked up her pen, writing one final entry. "Tomorrow we show Silver Creek that love isn't about where you come from, but who you choose to become. Jackson and I are ready. Let them bring their legal challenges and social pressure. We have something stronger, truth, determination, and a love built on respect and shared dreams. She closed the journal, setting it aside with the blue silk dress. Tomorrow would bring what it brought. But tonight, in this quiet moment with Jackson, she felt nothing but peace and certainty. They had found each other against all odds. Whatever Silver Creek threw at them, they would face it the same way they had faced everything else, together. The courthouse hummed with tension as Sarah stood before Judge Morton, her blue silk dress catching the morning light. Victoria Blackwood sat in the front row, resplendent in burgundy, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. But it was the document, in the judge's hands, that held everyone's attention. The marriage certificate still blank, waiting to be either validated or forbidden. The petition before us, Judge Morton intoned, adjusting his spectacles, claims that Miss Collins's prior mail-order bride contract renders any subsequent marriage agreement void. He peered down at Sarah. How do you respond to these charges? Before Sarah could speak, Victoria rose. If it pleases the court, we have additional evidence. She gestured to her father, who produced a folder with flourish. Documents proving Miss Collins's questionable history in Boston. A murmur rippled through the courthouse. Jackson's hand found Sarah's, squeezing gently. Objection! The voice rang out, clear and unexpected. Mrs. Potts stood, straight-backed and fierce. Your Honor, I move to present a counter-testimony. Judge Morton's eyebrows rose. Mrs. Potts, this is hardly the proper. Let her speak. The new voice came from the back of the courthouse. Elizabeth Harrison Cooper stood in the doorway, elegant in a San Francisco fashion. I believe my testimony is relevant to these proceedings. The room erupted in whispers. Victoria's face went pale. Elizabeth walked forward, her steps measured and confident. Your Honor, 10 years ago, the Blackwoods tried to manipulate me into contesting my father's will. They wanted to prevent Mr. Cooper from inheriting what he'd rightfully earned. She placed a packet of letters on the judge's desk. Here's their written offer to assist me in exchange for false testimony. Judge Morton opened the packet, his expression growing darker as he read. Victoria's father half rose. Now see here, I'm not finished. Elizabeth's voice cut like steel. I've also brought documents showing similar attempts to interfere with other business dealings in Silver Creek. A pattern of using social position to control who succeeds and who fails in this town. Sarah watched Victoria's face crumple as her carefully constructed plan dissolved, but it was Judge Morton's expression that held hope, a mix of shame and resolution. Further, Elizabeth continued, I have here Miss Collins's original mail-order bride contract, signed and voided by Mr. Richardson himself. There is no legal impediment to this marriage. The judge removed his spectacles, polishing them slowly. Miss Blackwood, Mr. Blackwood, did you knowingly present false claims to this court? Victoria's father stood, blustering. We were merely trying to protect... The only thing you were protecting, Jackson interrupted quietly, was your own power, just like always. Judge Morton raised his hand for silence. I find no legal barrier to this union. He lifted his pen. In fact, I would be honored to sign this marriage certificate myself, unless, he looked at Sarah and Jackson, you'd prefer to wait. Sarah felt Jackson's questioning gaze. She thought of her journal entry from the night before about choosing who you become. Looking at Victoria's defeated expression, she felt not triumph, but something like pity. No, Sarah said clearly. We're ready now. The ceremony that followed was brief but meaningful. Jenny produced the rings she'd been guarding. Mrs. Potts sniffled quietly in the background. Even Elizabeth smiled, her own past hurts clearly healed by time and success. As Judge Morton's pen scratched across the marriage certificate, making it official, Sarah heard Victoria's quick steps fleeing the courthouse. Not in shame, she suspected, but in transformation. Sometimes the hardest lessons were the most necessary. Mrs. Cooper, Jackson whispered, helping her down the courthouse steps into the bright afternoon light. How does it feel to be a properly scandalous Silver Creek bride? Sarah laughed, touching her mother's locket. Like everything I never knew I wanted. The town spread before them, its streets and buildings somehow different now. Not barriers to overcome, but a community to help build. They had won more than just the right to marry. They had won the chance to show Silver Creek a different way forward. "Well," came Mrs. Potts's voice behind them, "are you two just going to stand there? There's a wedding breakfast waiting at the ranch, and I didn't spend all night baking for it to go to waste." Hand in hand, they walked toward their future, the marriage certificate safely tucked away, not just a legal document, but proof that love, truth, and determination could overcome any boundary society tried to draw. The ranch management book lay open on Sarah's desk, its pages now filled with her neat handwriting alongside Jackson's. 3 months into her marriage, she'd developed her own system of notes and annotations. North pasture rotation schedule adjusted for early frost. Cattle count, 847, up 12 from last month. New windmill installation completed ahead of schedule. Mrs. Cooper, one of the younger ranch hands, Tommy, stood in the doorway. Got a situation with the Miller account. Sarah smiled at the title she was still getting used to. "What's wrong, Tommy?" "Well, ma'am, they're asking for an extension on their loan payment. Bad wheat harvest this year." Sarah consulted her records. "The Millers had been reliable partners for years. Tell them we'll adjust the terms. They can make half payments through winter, make up the difference after spring planting." Tommy's relief was visible. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." After he left, Sarah made careful notes in the ledger. Jackson's voice came from behind her. "You're getting good at this." She turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, hat in hand, dust from the range still on his clothes. "I had a good teacher. Better than good, I'd say." He crossed. "To examine her notes. This payment adjustment for the Millers, exactly what I would have done." "I know. I learned it from your old ledgers." She touched the neat columns of numbers. "Every decision based on both business and compassion. It's a delicate balance." Speaking of balance, Jackson pulled up a chair. "The town council sent another letter. They want you to join the education committee." Sarah's pen paused mid-word. "Me, but surely Victoria." "Victoria left for Denver last week. Apparently she's engaged to a banker there." His eyes crinkled with amusement. "Life has a way of moving forward, whether we expect it or not." Sarah thought of the frightened mail-order bride she'd been just months ago. It certainly does. A commotion outside drew them to the window. A new family was arriving. The Hendersons, hired to manage the south grazing operation. Their wagon was piled high with belongings, 3 young children perched atop the load. "I'll have Jenny prepare the old foreman's cabin," Sarah said, already making notes. "They'll need supplies to start, of course. We can deduct it from their first month's wages, already taken care of." Jackson grinned at her surprise. "I saw your notes about preparing for their arrival. Gave the orders this morning." Sarah felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. This was what real partnership felt like, anticipating each other's thoughts, working together seamlessly. She turned back to the ranch management book, adding fresh entries. Henderson family arrived, housing prepared, initial supplies provided. Then, in the margin, a more personal note. "Remember what it feels like to be new, starting fresh. Extend to others the welcome you wished for." "You're doing more than learning the ropes," Jackson said softly, reading over her shoulder. "You're redefining them." Sarah thought of the town council's letter, the changing atmosphere in Silver Creek. The old barriers were falling, slowly but surely. Her marriage to Jackson had done more than challenge social conventions. It had shown that success could come from unexpected places, that worth wasn't about where you started, but how you chose to live. A knock at the door revealed Mrs. Potts, who now served as their part-time housekeeper. "The Henderson children are asking about school," she announced. "And the missus wants to know if there's a church nearby." "I'll talk to them," Sarah said, adding another note to her book. "We'll need to arrange transportation to town for school days. And perhaps," she glanced at Jackson, Perhaps it's in time we started holding some community gatherings here at the ranch. Sunday suppers, maybe. Jackson's smile was all the answer she needed. As Mrs. Potts hurried off to welcome the newcomers, Sarah made one final entry in the ranch management book. Cooper Ranch isn't just a business. It's a community, a place where anyone can build a future if they're willing to work for it. Our job isn't just to manage the land, but to nurture the dreams that grow here. Looking up, she caught Jackson watching her with that mix of pride and love that still made her heart skip. What? Just thinking, he said, pulling her close, that hiring a mail-order bride was the best business decision I ever made. Sarah laughed and closed the book. Some things, after all, were too precious for ledgers and accounts. Those belonged in the heart, where love and legacy grew together like wild roses on the open range. The weather-worn map of Cooper Ranch dominated the study wall, its corners curling from constant handling. Sarah traced the ink lines marking water sources, her finger stopping at the now-dry creek beds. 6 weeks without rain had turned the late summer into a battle for survival. "The North Well's gone dry," Jackson announced, entering with trail dust still on his clothes. "Henderson says the south one's not far behind." Sarah added another X to the map. "How many cattle have we lost?" 12 this week, but it's not just us." He slumped into his chair. "Half the small ranches in the territory are talking about is selling out." Sarah studied the map's topography markings, her mind racing. "What about the old mining tunnels in Chapman's Ridge? You once said they were always wet." "Too dangerous. Cave-ins. Could be prevented with proper supports." She pulled out the ranch management book. "We have the lumber and the mining. Engineer who surveyed for the railroad last month. He's still in town." Jackson straightened. "Sarah, listen." She spread out her calculations. "If we can access that groundwater, run pipes down to the main valley, it wouldn't just save our cattle. We could help the smaller ranches, too. It would take every penny of our reserve funds. Then we'll use them." She met his eyes steadily. "Isn't this what Cooper Ranch stands for? Finding ways to help people help themselves?" A smile tugged at his lips. "When did you get so wise, Mrs. Cooper?" "I married a man who taught me that true wealth lies in what you build together." Their discussion was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Victoria Blackwood, now Victoria Ainsworth, stood in the doorway, her Denver fashions dusty from travel. "I heard about the drought," she said without preamble. "Father says you'll lose everything." Sarah tensed, but Victoria raised a hand. "I'm not here to gloat. I'm here to help." She produced a document from her bag. "My husband's bank is willing to extend credit, enough to tide over the smaller ranches until rain comes." "Why?" Jackson asked bluntly. "Because you were right." Victoria's voice softened. "About everything. Success isn't about controlling others. It's about building something worthwhile." She managed a small smile. "Marriage to a self-made banker has been educational." Sarah shared a look with Jackson. "We appreciate the offer, Victoria, but we have another plan." They spread out the map, explaining the mining tunnel project. Victoria listened intently, her business training evident in her quick questions. "It's risky," she said finally, "but brilliant." She straightened her skirts. "What if we combined our ideas? The bank loans could fund additional pipelines, help more ranches access the water." And so, an unlikely alliance was born. Over the next weeks, the ranch transformed into a hub of activity. The mining engineer, excited by the challenge, developed a detailed extraction plan. Neighboring ranchers provided labor, working alongside. Cooper Ranch, hands to shore up tunnels and lay pipes. Sarah updated their map daily, marking each new water line like veins bringing life back to the parched land. Even Mrs. Potts joined the effort, organizing a group of town women to provide meals for the workers. The day water first flowed from the new pipes, Sarah stood with Jackson watching their cattle drink deeply from the filled troughs. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it," he corrected. "Your vision, your plan, our plan," she insisted. "Everything." "Good here, we build together." Victoria approached, carrying paperwork. "The first loan payments won't be due until spring," she said, "and the bank's considering opening a Silver Creek branch." Sarah noticed how the other woman had changed, her proud bearing now tempered with purpose. Perhaps they had all been, transformed by challenge and choice. That evening, Sarah added new notes to their ranch management book. Water project completed. All participating ranches sustained. Estimated cattle saved, 1,500 head. Project cost exceeded by 15%, but value immeasurable. In the margin, she added a more personal note. Sometimes the worst challenges reveal the best in people. Silver Creek is changing. We're learning that true strength lies not in standing alone, but in lifting each other up. Jackson read over her shoulder, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted of dust and triumph and love. "Ready for our next adventure, Mrs. Cooper?" Sarah glanced at their map, its new waterlines a testament to what determination and cooperation could achieve. "Always, Mr. Cooper. Always." The town council minutes recorded a historic moment in Silver Creek's history. Motion to elect Sarah Cooper as first female council member passes unanimously. Sarah ran her fingers over the fresh ink, still amazed at how much had changed. In the year since her arrival, quite a difference from being the scorned mail-order bride, isn't it? Mrs. Potts said, arranging tea things in Sarah's new council office. "Though if you ask me, they should have done this months ago after the drought." It wasn't just the drought project. Jenny, now head housekeeper at Cooper Ranch, straightened a pile of petitions. "It's everything Mrs. Cooper's done since. The school expansion, the lending library, the Women's Business Association." Speaking of business, Victoria entered carrying financial reports. The bank's board has approved loans for 3 more female-owned shops. Her Denver polish had softened into something more genuine. Who would have thought Silver Creek would become a model of progressive business practices? Sarah smiled at the irony of working alongside her former nemesis. Victoria's banking expertise had proven invaluable in their efforts to expand opportunities in Silver Creek. "The council minutes from 10 years ago tell a different story," Sarah said, pulling out the old leather-bound volume. "Every page is filled with restrictions, limitations, ways to keep power concentrated among a select few, written by my father and his friends," Victoria acknowledged quietly. "We were so afraid of change, of losing control. We never realized that by holding others down, we were limiting ourselves too." A knock at the door announced Jackson's arrival. He carried a large parcel, special delivery for the newest council member. Sarah unwrapped it to find a new ledger, bound in tooled leather with her initials. Inside, he'd written, "For the next chapter of Silver Creek's story." "Perfect timing," she said, opening it to the first page. "The council's considering some major changes." She began to write in her careful hand, "Proposal to establish Silver Creek Business Development Fund, providing equal opportunity loans regardless of gender or social status. Initial funding pledged by Cooper Ranch and Ainsworth Banking. Father will have strong opinions about this," Victoria warned, but her eyes sparkled, "especially the part about my bank's involvement." "Let him," Sarah said firmly. "Silver Creek is everyone's home now. It's time our policies reflected that." The afternoon brought a stream of visitors, ranchers' wives with ideas for new businesses, young women seeking education opportunities, even Mrs. Havisham, who had gradually become one of Sarah's strongest supporters. "Never thought I'd see the day," Mrs. Potts muttered, bringing in more tea. "That woman used to cross the street to avoid you." "People change," Sarah said. "We all have." Later, reviewing applications for the new business fund, Sarah found herself thinking of that first day in Silver Creek, the rejection, the whispers, the loneliness. The town that had once shunned her now looked to her for leadership. Jackson found her there at sunset, still working. "The ranch hands said you might need rescuing from all this paperwork. Just finishing up the minutes." She showed him her neat entries, proposals for new businesses, plans for town improvements, programs to help other women build independent lives. Sometimes I can hardly believe how much has changed. I can. He perched on the edge of her desk. You showed this town a better way, proved that character matters more than circumstance. We proved it, she corrected. Everything good here. We still build together. She made one final entry in the council minutes, motion to establish annual Silver Creek Founders Festival, celebrating all who contribute to our community's growth, passed unanimously. A new tradition, Jackson mused. Think the old guard will approve? They'll adapt. Sarah smiled. After all, if a mail-order bride and a self-made rancher can become town leaders, anything's possible in Silver Creek. She closed the ledger, ready to head home. Through her office window, she could see the lights of Silver Creek coming on one by one, each one representing a family, a dream, a future waiting to unfold. The town that had once been a symbol of rejection had become a beacon of possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to build and grow. But tonight, walking home hand in hand with Jackson, Sarah knew they would face it all together, just as they had since the day he saw past her threadbare dress to recognize a spirit as unstoppable as his own. The letter from Sarah's sister lay open on her desk, its Boston postmark a reminder of the life she'd left behind. Dearest Sarah, Mother would be so proud. We're taking the train west next week. I can hardly wait to see this empire you've built. Nervous? Jackson asked, finding her reading the letter for the 100th time. A little. Sarah touched her mother's locket. When I left Boston, I was running away from poverty, from pity. Now you're a respected business owner, town council member, and my brilliant wife. He pulled her close. Though I'm still not sure what you see in this humble rancher. She laughed against his chest. Humble, the man who revolutionized cattle ranching in the territory? The sound of approaching wheels interrupted their banter. Sarah's heart leaped as a hired carriage rolled up the drive, her sister Emma's familiar face beaming from the window. Sarah! Emma flew into her arms while her husband James helped their children down. Oh, look at you! You're positively glowing! Sarah led them into the house, watching their reactions. Emma's eyes widened at the elegant furnishings, the signs of prosperity and taste. This is all yours, her nephew William asked, gazing around in awe. Ours, Jackson corrected, entering with their bags. Everything here we built together. Over dinner, Sarah watched her family absorb the changes in her. Emma kept shaking her head in wonder. When you wrote about becoming a mail-order bride, we were so worried. But this, would Mother have approved, do you think? Sarah asked. Softly, Emma reached across the table to squeeze her hand. She always said you had steel in your spine. She knew you'd find your way. Later, showing Emma the ranch accounts, Sarah remembered their childhood dreams of escape from poverty. It's strange, she mused. I came west looking for security, but found purpose instead. And love, Emma added, watching through the window as Jackson showed William the horses. Real love. The next day, Sarah took them into town. She couldn't help smiling at their surprise when shopkeepers called out greetings, when ranch wives stopped to consult her about business matters. Mrs. Cooper, a young woman, hurried up, eyes bright. The loan committee approved my application. I can open my dress shop next month. That's wonderful, Mary. Sarah turned to her sister. Mary's designs are extraordinary. She'll be dressing all of Silver Creek soon. Emma waited until Mary left before saying, They respect you here. Really respect you. It wasn't always that way. Sarah led them to the town square. See that? Bench, I sat there my first day thinking I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Now you're the heart of this place. Emma's voice held pride and something like awe. The visit passed too quickly. On their last evening, Sarah found James in the study, examining the ranch management book. Remarkable operation you run here, he said. We've been thinking of expanding west ourselves. Perhaps, would you consider a business partnership? Sarah's heart warmed at this final validation. I'll have Jackson draw up some proposals. At the station, Emma hugged her tight. I was wrong to doubt your decision to come west. You found something precious here. More than found it. Sarah said. "We built it." Watching the train pull away, Sarah felt Jackson's arms slip around her waist. "Happy? Complete," she answered. "For the first time in my life, completely complete." They walked home through their town, for it was their town now, shaped by their vision of what community could be. Every storefront, every friendly face, every new enterprise represented a small victory over the prejudices that had once threatened to defeat her. That evening, Sarah added her sister's letter to a box of precious mementos: her mother's locket, the infamous marriage agreement that had brought her west, the town council election certificate. Each one a chapter in her transformation from unwanted mail-order bride to beloved wife and community leader. "Ready for bed, Mrs. Cooper?" Jackson called. "Coming, Mr. Cooper." She closed the box gently. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to build and grow. But tonight she was simply grateful for every step of the journey that had led her home. The foundation document for Silver Creek's first public trust bore two signatures at the bottom: Jackson and Sarah Cooper. Between them, the carefully worded text laid out their vision: to establish a permanent fund for the advancement of enterprise, education, and opportunity in Silver Creek territory, regardless of circumstance or origin. "It's a fine thing you're doing," Judge Morton said, affixing his official seal. 2 years had passed since he'd signed their marriage certificate, and his initial skepticism had transformed into genuine respect. "Not just us," Sarah corrected, watching Jackson shake hands with Victoria Ainsworth, whose bank would help manage. "The trust. Everyone who contributes makes this possible." The first beneficiary of the trust stood nervous but proud in the corner. Jenny, their former maid, now awaited final approval for a loan to open Silver Creek's first proper seamstress shop. "All the paperwork's in order," Victoria announced, her businesslike tone failing to hide her satisfaction. "Congratulations, Mrs. Harrison." Sarah smiled at Jenny's married name. She'd wed the ranch foreman 6 months ago, their romance blossoming during the drought crisis. Now they represented exactly the kind of hard-working couple the trust was designed to help. "This is just the beginning," Jackson said, reviewing the trust's ambitious scope. "With the railroad coming through next year, Silver Creek's going to grow. We need to make sure that growth benefits everyone." The foundation document spelled out their plans: loans for new businesses, scholarships for promising students, grants for community improvements. But more than that, it enshrined the principles that had transformed Silver Creek from a closed society into a place of possibility. "Remember when they tried to stop our wedding?" Sarah mused later, walking home with Jackson through the bustling streets. "Now look at this place." Indeed, Silver Creek had blossomed. New shops lined the main street, their owners a mix of old families and newcomers. Children played in the newly built schoolyard, their laughter carrying on the warm spring air. Outside Mary's dress shop, ladies from all social circles mingled, admiring her latest designs. "Mrs. Cooper," a voice called out. Ruth Miller, wife of one of their tenant farmers, hurried over. "The library committee approved our proposal. We're getting new books for the children's section." The public library had been Sarah's pet project. Started with donations from her own books and grown through community support. Now it served as both learning center and meeting place, its reading room often full of people improving themselves through education. Back at the ranch, Sarah added the foundation document to their records, its purpose extending far beyond legal requirements. This was their true legacy, not just the land or the cattle or the wealth they'd built, but the changes they'd inspired in how people saw themselves and each other. "Penny for your thoughts?" Jackson asked, finding her still at her desk at sunset. "I was thinking about that first day, when Mrs. Havisham told me to try my luck in a mining town." Sarah smiled at the memory. "How different everything might have been if I'd listened." "You never would have." He perched on the edge of her desk, his favorite spot. "That's what I saw in you that first day, the same stubbornness that wouldn't let me quit when everyone said a common ranch hand couldn't succeed." A knock at the door revealed Mrs. Potts with surprising news. Another mail-order bride arrived on today's stage, she announced. Poor thing's in quite a state. Seems her intended took one look at her plain dress and rejected her outright. Sarah and Jackson shared a look of perfect understanding. Where is she now? At my inn, of course. Where else would I put her? Tell her. Sarah paused, thinking of all the twists and turns that had led to this moment. Tell her to come. See me tomorrow. I may have an opportunity for her. After Mrs. Potts left, Jackson raised an eyebrow. Planning to take on another project? We're always talking about paying our blessings forward. She gestured to the foundation document. What better way than to help someone else find their path? He pulled her into a kiss that still made her heart race. Have I told you lately how much I love you, Mrs. Cooper? You might have mentioned it. She smiled against his lips, but I never tire of hearing it. Outside their window, Silver Creek prepared for night, lights twinkling on one by one. Each light represented a story, a dream, a future made possible. Because two unlikely people had dared to challenge the old ways, their legacy would live on, not just in documents and buildings, but in every life touched by the simple truth they'd proven, that worth came from character, not circumstance, and that love could transform not just two hearts, but an entire community. 1 year later, the family portrait hung in pride of place above the study fireplace. Sarah and Jackson Cooper, surrounded by their growing family, not just their newborn daughter Grace, but the extended clan of ranch hands, employees and friends who had become their true family in Silver Creek. It's perfect, Jenny said, adjusting Grace's christening gown. The former maid, now a successful businesswoman, had become one of Sarah's dearest friends. Though I still say the baby has your eyes. And Jackson's stubborn chin, Sarah laughed, cradling her daughter. Through the window, she could see her husband giving a riding lesson to Catherine, the mail-order bride they'd helped last year. She'd turned out to have a natural way with horses and now managed their breeding program. The sound of carriages announced the arrival of their guests. The christening would bring together all of Silver Creek, from ranch hands to bankers, a gathering that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. Victoria Ainsworth arrived first, her own newborn son in arms. Ready for the big day? She settled beside Sarah, their children reaching for each other with curious fingers. Father actually agreed to attend, said he couldn't miss his honorary granddaughter's christening. Sarah smiled at how far they'd all come. Mr. Blackwood had gradually softened his stance, especially after the foundation's success proved that prosperity could be shared without being diminished. Mrs. Potts bustled in with fresh lemonade. Just saw Judge Morton arriving and Mrs. Havisham's wearing her best purple dress. The whole town's turned out, Jackson said, entering with Catherine. Even got a telegram from Elizabeth Harrison. Sends her love from San Francisco. Sarah touched her mother's locket, now containing a tiny portrait of Grace alongside the old family picture. Mother would have loved this, she said softly. Not just the baby, but everything we've built here. Speaking of building, Jackson pulled out the latest bank statement. The foundation's funded 15 new businesses this year. Jenny's shop is the most successful clothing store in the territory. Catherine's breeding program is revolutionizing horse trading. And the libraries, adding a second story. Not bad for a mail-order bride and a former ranch hand, Sarah teased. The christening itself was a celebration of more than just Grace's arrival. It marked the transformation of Silver Creek from a rigid society into a true community. As Grace was passed from arms to arms, Sarah saw the future they'd helped create, one where worth was measured by character, where opportunity was limited only by ambition and effort. Later, as the party moved to the garden, Sarah found Jackson standing before the portrait. Quite a family we've made, he said, pulling her close. Quite a legacy, too. She leaned into him, watching Grace being doted on by their gathered friends. Though I don't think our story's finished yet. Oh? Mary's opening a second dress shop in the new railroad town. She wants our help setting up an apprenticeship program for young women. And Catherine's been talking about expanding the breeding program. Jackson laughed. Always another mountain to climb, isn't there? That's what happens when you marry someone as stubborn as yourself. They shared a kiss that still held all the warmth of their first. Through the window, they could see Silver Creek spread out below their ranch, its streets busy with life and commerce. Somewhere in town, another stagecoach would be arriving, perhaps carrying another dreamer looking for a fresh start. "You know what I love most about this portrait?" Sarah said, studying the gathered faces. "It shows that family isn't about where you come from. It's about who you choose to become and who you choose to become it with." Grace's cry drew them back to the party, to the warmth of friendship and the joy of possibilities yet to come. The portrait watched over them all, a testament to love's power to transform not just two hearts, but an entire world. Sarah Cooper had arrived in Silver Creek with nothing but dreams and determination. She'd found more than a husband, more than success. She'd found a way to help others build their own dreams. And that, she knew, was the greatest legacy of all. "Ready for our next adventure, Mrs. Cooper?" Jackson whispered, as Grace drifted to sleep in her arms. Sarah smiled, thinking of all the journeys yet to come. "Always, Mr. Cooper. Always."
They said she didn't belong, that she'd never be enough. But love doesn't ask for permission, and hope doesn't wear silk. In the end, it was the girl with nothing who reminded them all what truly mattered. Silver Creek would never forget the day Sarah Collins found not just love, but her place in the world.